It's Jess with Emotional Fire Academy today to talk about highly sensitive person treatment and what that entails, what it looks like, what it means, and break all of it down. And watch all the way to the end because this is super valuable information. This is an insight I had wished I'd had on my own journey to quote unquote cure my highly sensitiveness and teach you some shortcuts about how to actually get to the end faster. So subscribe to my channel if you are a highly sensitive person who is looking for weekly tips, tricks, and tools to help you up-level your sensitivity. It's exactly what my channel is about, so welcome if this is your first time here. I'm Jess. I am your driver operator on this journey. I am a former firefighter and a master NLP practitioner, and that's where a lot of my teachings come from. NLP is really cool stuff if you've never heard of it before, but we're going to dive into some of the concepts today. So, all right. So when we're thinking about, if we're Googling or looking for information about treatment for our sensitivity, we're essentially saying, I want to change. I want to be different. I don't like this. I don't like my experience, and I'm blaming it on my sensitivity, right? And we have to remember that this construct of what high sensitivity is actually, they've quantified it as a personality type. So it's kind of like introversion and extroversion. And so when you say like, I need treatment for being an introvert, you have to remember that you have way more control over the situation than you think. If you want to be, less introverted, then you do things that an extrovert would do, right? You kind of shift into that new personality. So I think a lot of people, when they're really feeling crappy and they are a highly sensitive person, there's often this tendency to link the two. I know I did that. I've been there and I did that. And I was like, if I could just not be a highly sensitive person, if I could cure this, if I could not be HSP, my life is going to be great. It's actually, it's a little more complex than that. So bear with me. I want to give you a bigger picture view. So if you are someone who feels like you need treatment or help or therapy or something, you need something to be different. I want to be different. At the core of this is I want to feel differently. I want to experience life differently. Something is wrong, something is off, and I want to change it. There's a problem. So my question to you is, how effective do you want this treatment to be? How deep do you want it to go? And that is my answer to you, my preliminary answer. Now, I'm going to explore this in the upcoming videos, and I highly suggest you tune in for those because they're going to get deeper and deeper into this, more philosophical, more interesting, and give you a totally different perspective if you are looking for treatment options. And things that, I wish I had known on my own journey. So listen all the way to the end. Check this out. Bear with me. So the thought is, I want to change. I want to be different. So let's get a bigger bird's eye view of what the levels of change, as I understand them, as they make sense to me, as they're presented in NLP. So there's this kind of hierarchical, a little bit of a hierarchy. As we go through the levels of change, we're going to touch on each of these briefly and kind of talk more about them. So when you're looking for a treatment option, right, you can kind of attack it. If you start attacking it at each one of these levels, you're going to see a level of change happen, potentially. But it depends on how deep you want to go, because they're kind of, the stuff at the top is more doing, right? It's action-based. It's doing things. It's more out of survival, right? When the doing stuff, just doing it to survive, more superficial changes that happen because the things that we're doing are more of actions that we're taking. Whereas as we go down the scale, as we get deeper into these are the deeper changes that we're going to start to make. We get down towards the bottom, we hit identity development. This is being. This is literally, you go from doing things to try and help yourself, to literally being different. You embody the difference. The transformation is complete Total, right? The difference between doing and being. It's hard to capture this in words. It really is an energetic and psychological experience of something that occurs in your consciousness. And we're going to talk about how when you can tell when you've kind of gotten stuck at one of these levels. And so this is about depth, going from doing to being, doing things to help yourself to actually being a different person, fully embodying the change, being different. And this is about your commitment. How committed are you to being different, to changing your circumstances, your situation, your identity, essentially? How committed are you? Being different, stepping into an identity is you are different. You are different. The change is done. Like, it's finished. These more superficial things, it's okay to start here. I started here. This is where I think a lot of people, a lot of us hold this perception that level of change you can't just step into instantaneously. I disagree. I think this is where when people do heroic acts, when they suddenly do something amazing, when someone's life changes in a day, which happens frequently, and we're going to get into this more. This happens a lot more than we think, than we're conscious of. And so to intentionally do that, to intentionally make that jump, it just takes awareness. And that's what I'm trying to bring you today, is that awareness of the bigger picture of how change happens, how it works, how the depth, the levels of depth, and then how to then quantum jump into higher levels of change faster. It doesn't have to be incremental. It can be incremental. I went incrementally. I was looking for this identity jump. I was searching, I was hunting, and I ended up doing it step by step, and that's okay. Sometimes that's just how we have to do things. We have to take baby steps because we don't perceive that we can make that leap. We don't perceive that we can make that leap, right? We feel stuck at some level. So let's go deeper into this. So on a circumstantial level, levels of change. So doing something different, changing your circumstances, right? This is about changing something that's outside of you. Quitting the job, leaving the relationship, moving. And we're going to talk about that. That plays into this differently too. But doing something in your outer environment to make your inner environment more palatable. And sometimes this initially does give us this little like, oh, I feel better. I quit that job. I feel better. I left that relationship. I feel better. I took that job. I took that new job, or I got into that new relationship. The rest of this stuff catches up with us eventually, right? Because on a very superficial level, we're changing things outside of us to enact a change inside. And eventually the equilibrium will return where we're feeling the same way again as we did before. So then as we go down, emotional change. And let me go back to circumstantial first. So for an HSP, treatment might be, a quick fix might be doing any of those things, leaving a relationship or gaining a relationship, leaving a job or getting a new job, changing careers, changing friend groups, doing any of this stuff might be a preliminary step that you would take as a highly sensitive person to quote unquote treat yourself, to make things better. When we move down into the emotional aspects, and again, I return you to the emotional fire triangle. It's back for you, those of you who have missed it. This is the core of my coaching foundation. The thought that emotion, the little fire in the middle, comes about because three things are coming together, causing this emotional combustion. That's physiology, conditioning, and language. So if we're just treating the emotional aspects, right? I just want to feel better. I just want to feel better as a highly sensitive person. I just want to feel better. We're just putting out the fire. We're essentially putting out the fire over and over and over and over again, but we're never addressing the other three aspects. Again, this creates a lot of wasted energy. in fire prevention, one of the things that we recognize is that, if the three elements of what create fires, right, oxygen, a heat source, and fuel, if there's an abundance of that and we have to keep going back to put the fire out, we're really just kind of wasting our time. We have to start addressing the three elements that are causing the fire. And for the human experience, I believe the fire is emotion. This is emotion. So if we're just putting the fire in the middle out over and over and over again, it's a lot of doing. It's a lot of energy spent. And that's okay. Again, if that's where you're at, if you're just like, I just want to feel better. I just want to feel better. Once I feel better, everything will be great. How does this look like for a highly sensitive person? So this is often the point where traditional Western medicine will suggest medicine. Because what does medicine do? What do pharmaceuticals do? They mess with that middle. They mess with the middle. They kind of put us in this weird artificial emotional state. And I really don't like pharmaceuticals. I like herbal supplements, but I think, again, to just take a pill to deal with your emotions is, again, not addressing what's causing the emotions. It's not addressing the root cause. It just masks the symptom. It changes the symptom. And so this is like, again, taking a pill. If you're a diabetic, taking a pill to treat your diabetes, but not accounting, your diet and your lifestyle choices, still consuming large amounts of sugar and carbohydrates and not exercising and, not doing the things that you can manage your diabetes with, by just taking a pill. It's kind of a shortcut. So again, emotional treatments, if Western medicine suggests to you that to treat your anxiety and depression that you feel are attached to your highly sensitiveness, meds are an option. I have never taken pharmaceuticals myself to deal with my emotional fires. And a gentler option might be herbal supplements. I definitely have experimented with herbal supplements, and I think they can be helpful. But again, this is about, and it depends on how much energy you want to invest in this process. If you really want to be different and feel different and have different emotions, you got to keep digging down into the levels of change. So let's go next to physiological. So your physiological, if you want to start, so this is attacking the problem from the body side. So I'm going to do things differently in my body to feel better on the whole. Again, this is a step up. You're going deeper into, a step down, I guess, in depth. You're getting deeper into the process. You're getting more committed to the process. For highly sensitive people, this looks like getting enough rest, taking care of your, making sure you have a nice quiet environment that you can decompress in. This also might look like herbal support, eating well. What are you eating? Changing diet, doing dietary changes to support your body, as opposed to feeling like you're fighting against it as a highly sensitive person. Now this I did when I started to see changes in myself, like actual palpable, holistic changes. This was the level where when I started doing things for my physiology, had some big gains. I had some really big gains. So I definitely, I support anything physiological. So support your body so that you are not fighting against it as a highly sensitive person. There's tons of great articles out there about, things, I've seen 45 survival techniques for highly sensitive people. One of them's like, have a dark room to sit in, limit your stimulation, and again, these are all things that are going to help your body. And that's good. That is good. But again, if you're just helping your physiology, you got to account for the other things. And that's as we continue to move deeper, we're going to be doing that. Um, and we kind of cross this threshold after physiological. We move into more of being, right? Attacking this from a consciousness perspective. And so the psychological aspect, this is about shifting your perception and beliefs about what it means to be a highly sensitive person. This is where I feel like my channel kind of jumps in. I kind of jump in at a psychological level where I'm describing these bigger processes to you, and you can get a different awareness, a different perception of what is happening on a meta level. However, there's a difference between understanding something intellectually and actually doing it, right? And so that's the difference between understanding something intellectually, but then putting it into practice, putting it into action, becoming it, being it, right? We're still kind of up here and not quite being, understanding, but not quite taking the steps to be that, to do that, to embody that. And, but that's a huge step, understanding something, being open and able to accept new beliefs, new perceptions. That's a huge part of shifting your relationship as a highly sensitive person. So actually understanding, okay, this is a personality characteristic. I can just decide to shift my personality. Personality shifts, people do it all the time. People go from being introverted to extroverted all the time, or extroverted to introverted, right? It's kind of a process that we all go through in life naturally. So that's what's happening on a psychological level. Next we get to behavioral, and we're getting really close to being here, right? When you've committed to doing things different on a behavioral level, you're most likely enacting your willpower, right? You're like, I'm going to just do things different. You've been like, I'm going to change my habits. I'm going to do it differently. I'm going to, it's like when we decide to diet, we go out there, we're like, I'm going to eat so well. I'm going to eat well. And then we do it for a while and then we crash. We crash. So if you rely on willpower at the behavioral level, it takes a lot. Again, you're not quite a being. You're just a step away, and eventually you might slide back if you don't adopt the identity. And again, it's like forcing ourselves to do and be something we don't feel like we are yet. This is where imposter syndrome comes in. If you are trying to be you're trying to reach this identity and you're pretending, you're going through the motions of being this person, but deep down you don't feel like you are, and you're like, oh my god, people are going to figure me out any moment now. That's the difference. That's where imposter syndrome lurks in this level, in this behavioral psychological level. And to move past imposter syndrome, to be like, I am actually, this new identity, we got to move into being, the very basis of being, right? On the identity level. So changing our identity. And we're going to jump more into this in the next videos, and I can't wait to talk about this. And this is when I talk about personas, changing personas, shifting personas. And we shift identities, like when we actually change our identity as a highly sensitive person, that's when all this other stuff, like, it comes into place. Because identity is a construct of is a consciousness construct. And to me, it really feels like a location in our consciousness, because when we step into that location, all of this stuff lines up. We start behaving differently. We start thinking differently. We start feeling differently. Our emotions are different. And often then the circumstances around us shift naturally when we step into this identity. I have directly experienced this. I'm sure you have. It's funny because COVID has actually forced us all into different identities, because a lot of the mechanisms that we've been operating from before COVID that we kind of took for granted have been removed. And so now a lot of people are feeling like, well, who am I without this stuff? And having to look at it and sit in it and deal with it is, sometimes it feels like very daunting. So, I think we do identity changes a lot more often unconsciously. but we can do them consciously. We can say, I am going to become this. I'm going to become this. I'm going to create this identity as a highly sensitive person. And for me, I use a different word. I call it a super sensor. I am going to become a super sensor. And so stepping into that super sensor identity and consciously deciding this is what it looks like to feel like a super sensor. I feel amazing every day. I receive information that I would get as a highly sensitive person, and then I leverage it for my benefit. Instead of feeling attacked or disappointed or sad or anxious about that information, I'm going to leverage that information to take inspired action and to make things happen on the outside. So often, again, if you want to change as a highly sensitive person, you got to go right to identity. Stepping into a new identity and committing to that identity and being that identity. And identity, it's a development, right? There's not only, it's about being consistent, because you can wobble. You can step into the identity and then go back out. Step in, go back out. So there's a consistency that it requires, right? And you're developing this identity. So you get more and more consistent in staying in the identity. And then more and more consistent it's about decisiveness or making decisions within that identity. So you're making decisions in that identity that then change all of this stuff. You're acting, you go to that spot, you inhabit it, you make a decision from that perspective, from that point, and then everything changes. And there's also a ripening or an evolution that takes place, right? You get more bold in that identity. You're like, this is really me. This is who I am. I am really this person. And so it's a developmental process where once you inhabit that spot, you spend more time there, you start to look around. You're like, you get more perspective from that point, from that position, and then more courage from that position to really act from that position and to not have to go back to whoever you were before. So as far as treatment options go, oh, and I'm sorry, behavioral, this is where, any type of psycho-behavioral therapies would come in. So cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, these teach you different ways of relating to yourself, different ways of, as a highly sensitive person, different ways of coping, different ways of resiliency, which are very good. Learning that will help you develop this identity. But again, until you fully step into that identity, until you fully commit to doing those things all the time, and that's when we really gel that identity up. So, and there's some great people who are already talking about this type of quantum change to go right to the identity level. Joe Dispenza is one of them. He literally has a book called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. He's had some amazing results with his clients, his customers. Also, there's a guy named Todd Herman who wrote a book called The Alter Ego Effect, which is really interesting. He comes at it from more of a high performance angle where his clients or celebrities, athletes, they develop this alter ego that then outperforms the old self, but they still maintain both of the identities, which is really interesting. And I think adaptive for someone who's in the spotlight and who needs to kind of have the protection of, well, that's my alter ego. I'm putting them on the stage. Me as my core identity is then stepping back and having a private life and having a personal life. So it's some interesting concepts there. Again, this is where we want to start making the change and coming to treatment or curing things or being different as a highly sensitive person. So this video is very long. Thank you for staying. If you're still here, like the video. It does change the algorithm and it gets this information out to more people, which is what I want to do. So anyway, leave a comment below. Which of these levels have you tried and where are you at and where are you ready to go? Where on your journey? It's okay if you're ready to just go to the next step. That's what I did. I worked my way up into identity and then popped into it and was like, all right, I'm here. So, and if you do need hand holding, if you are a highly sensitive person who is struggling right now, I can give you that hand holding. I can be with you as you go through these levels and coach you through them through my Flammable to Fireproof program. It's a 3-month journey to become an emotional hotshot. So check that out on my website, emotionalfireacademy.com, and thank you for watching. Bye.